Hey fan peeps, this is your podcast host Kunal here. I started this during the pandemic, and in this podcast I discuss my nerdy thoughts and hobbies with you, with the occasional special guest. From anime to Zeppelins, we talk about it all. Hey everybody, today's episode is going to be a little different. It's going to be a follow-up, I think, to the previous two episodes in the way of it being very Japan-centered, because guess what? I spent 18 days in Japan. That was awesome. And we're going to tell you about it. And when I say we, I'm not even saying the royal we. I have a long-time listener and who's been a good friend of mine since 2020. His name is Andrew. Andrew, can you say hello for us?
Hello, this is like truly the Gambit meme at this point.
Well, let me explain that a little bit because... Well, let me introduce like how I know you in the first place. It was through a bunch of mutual friends. We were all, it was right in the heavy pandemic. And we were all like, hey, let's do a D&D campaign with each other. And I forget if it was Pathfinder or just...
Nah, we were playing 5th edition.
5th edition? That's right. Okay, cool. I always, for some reason, keep on defaulting to Pathfinder. I don't know why. But anyhow, we were playing it and I put up there, I was like, oh yeah, I'm starting a podcast. Here you go. And then eventually I get like a text from this kid who's on the D&D campaign with me. And he's like, hey, Kunal, nice job on the episode today. And I'm literally remember this very distinctly because I was walking from doing laundry and I get this text from him and I was like, oh, well, that's cool. All right. And then it basically started our friendship. We became pretty good confidants of each other and I think I can pretty like explicitly say not explicitly, but like kindly say that we've kind of been really good support systems for each other over the past 4 years. We've had a lot of stuff happen since the pandemic, just personally that, we don't have to get into. And when I was in Japan, I was sending you some stuff and I was like, before I left, Andrew was like, yeah, you should do an episode called Weeb, Pray, Love. And it was probably like the best title. That's going to be the title of the episode. Just here and now, telling everyone that. And after a while, I was like, hey, since you came up with a great title name, do you mind just like being on a guest? And the meme that you gave back, do you want to say it?
I mean, I don't know that I can nail the whole Channing Tatum. It was Channing Tatum, right? That was the Gambit. I don't know that I can nail the whole accent. Like, you know how long I've been waiting for this. Woo, about to make a name for myself out here.
I think that's perfect. We'll just go with that.
Thank you. That's really not going to age well. People are going to listen to this like years later and like, oh, geez.
maybe not. But like, for now, it's funny. We'll take it now.
Yeah.
And we'll take it now. So yeah, I hit 4 or 5 cities and it was just a fun time. I've been planning it since April, and when I got diagnosed with OCD earlier this year and was kind of all over the place, I was like, I need to have something to look forward to that kind of gives me an impetus to get better. And I was actually with my parents. We were having Thai food, and my dad actually knows the manager or owner out there, and he was talking about how he just came back with his daughters from Japan. And he's like, yeah, if you're a fan of anime and you like all this stuff. And the moment he said anime, my dad looked at me and like smiled. He's like, hey, you should go. And I was like, maybe I should. And so then from that point on, I was quietly planning and plotting of like, how do I go there? I reached out to a bunch of people, and I reached out to some family members. I was just telling them casually like, oh yeah, I'm planning on, it's still very developmental, but I'm going here. And then they were like, hey, we actually know somebody who's living there. And it was someone I had heard of for years and years, but his name's Charles Liu. Fantastic person. We got along like toast and butter. It was kind of ridiculous. And yeah, I know, right? And he's living in Japan. Grew up in America, ethnically Chinese, but living in Japan now since Trump got elected the first time. And he took me around, gave me a bunch of great advice, gave me his spare transit card to use so I didn't have to go get one and stuff like that. But it was a great time. He was a huge help. He deserves a shout out on this episode for sure. But yeah, so Andrew's gonna do the interviewing on this one, and which is something I've quietly always wanted. So, and but like always just cried a little bit inside because no one wanted to do it until now. But I'm
Well,
happy now we can do it.
you're on the call with a licensed psychologist. I'm gonna do your interview. I might ask you how you
Yay!
feel about things. We'll see
I
where this
will.
takes us.
I mean, I'm more than happy to answer that question. So feel free to ask it anytime. Cool. So Andrew, how do you want to start this, man?
God, where do we begin? Where do we begin? So, I mean, I think maybe just like a roundup of all the
Sure.
places you went. That sounds like the best place to start.
Well, maybe I should tell you about the whirlwind of how it was to get there.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, sure. So it was insane. So, like leading up to it, so this is all preparation. So CDC in for Japan's that there is no official requirements for vaccinations. But I was like, I ain't getting fucking sick abroad. So I was like, we're like fucking. I'm getting vaxxed up. I'm getting vaxxed and waxed as much as I can. So let's go ahead and do.
Waxed and waxed?
Yeah, dog. You gotta be prepared. You gotta be
All right,
prepared,
yeah, sure. I got you.
and you gotta be smooth. You gotta be ready, inside and out.
I'm just gonna let this one keep going.
That's
Please
right.
continue.
Indeed. So I was already getting allergy shots. And then like 2 days later, I would get like a vaccination. So I was doing that leading up to the trip and then planning and then working on getting reservations, getting tickets, being like, okay, do I need these train tickets? Do I need the Shinkansen tickets? Like, what do I need? All this stuff is getting ready. And this is the first time that I don't think I haven't said this yet, but I was traveling alone. So I
Hmm.
wasn't traveling with friends. I met up with friends who were already there and whatnot. But for the most part, I was traveling alone. I had asked other people if they were interested, and typically the responses were like, I would love to go, but I'm out of cash, or I would love to go, but I'm busy. And those are all valid excuses, but I was like, I can't keep on fucking waiting. I gotta go, otherwise I'll never go. So I did. And I was like, you know what? I can strike up conversations. I'll be fine. I'll make it happen. I actually was in a yoga class and I mentioned I was going to Japan to just casually mention to someone who I'd never really talked to before. And the rapport we had within that 30 seconds was really good. He was like, Keenan. Keenan's a good friend of mine now, actually. He's like, hey, I have an extra slot in my Duolingo. Do you want to just take it? And I was like, yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. And that actually helped me learn like we're talking like maybe a 3-year-old level of Japanese, like of saying konbawa, konnichiwa, nice to meet you, dozorosko, and other like small phrases like that. But predominantly, I use Google Translate
Yeah.
for it.
So that's actually something I don't think you've told me about so far. Like,
Yeah.
how long were you on Duolingo for? Like, how much prep did you
Mm.
do prior to traveling?
2 to 3 months. So like
Wow.
I yeah, 2 3 months, and so I would just do like a couple like maybe 10 minutes a day, and it has like it does the thing where it kind of gamifies it for you, so it's more
Hmm.
fun to learn. I will say there is a peak. There's a nah, not a peak, but there is a plateau point for people who learn languages like myself where it's like, okay, I actually think I need to write this out because at a certain point, like it's a different alphabet altogether. It's not the acrylic alphabet. It's not like anything close to ours, obviously.
Hmm.
And so from there, it was kind of hard to do it because I had to remember like characters and stuff that I'd never had any kind of basis for. So that's where it kind of plateaued for me, but it got what I needed to. And I will say that for the most part in Japan, everything is in English and Japanese because we strong armed the hell out of them after World War II, historically.
Yikes.
Yeah, I
Yep.
know. We just got to be
Uh,
honest about that and
we
say
do.
it. But so yeah, and a hand and like especially like high tourist areas, people speak English and whatnot. But yeah, so I did it. But to answer your question, about 60 days leading up to it, and then It was actually kind of adorable whenever you get like answers right. They do this little like there's little characters that kind of jump around and stuff. There's even yeah, there's even one that has like has the North Indian like turban and stuff, and he's just like chubby and he's just like bouncing around, and it was super adorable. I sent it to my dad, and he was having a good laugh from it. So I don't think I told you that, but yeah,
Bonding with family over the bird.
yeah, yeah. That green
So
bird was like just wearing sunglasses and doing cool moves and shit. It was hilarious.
So we can move on to the next bullet point, but one
Yeah.
thing I am curious, like with the amount of prep that you did and
Mhm.
the amount of English that is actively used in a lot of Japanese cities, do you feel like that was like the right amount? If you could go back and change things, would you do less, more?
So I'll tell you this: from years of both of us watching anime, watching subtitles for playing video games, I was like, "Yo, I'm gonna be bomb out there." And I get there, and immediately I hear people speaking Japanese to me, and I go,
Choto,
"Konnichiwa,
choto.
chotomate." Yeah, yeah. And like the thing is, like I could like the what they were saying. I probably like I was like I knew a couple words, but like one they're saying it so much faster than I'm used to hearing it, and so I was like, let me get my translator out. I don't know. Let me turn on the microphone setting. So it gave me this false confidence that I knew Japanese, even though I didn't. And I will say that like if I had more time to prepare, I would have felt better. But I did run into a lot of other Americans there, and they pretty much had the same level and were able to get around pretty well. So
Oh,
so you'll be fine. It's
nice.
surprisingly, yeah, you'll be fine. Surprisingly, like I said, if you speak English, you can pretty much 80% of the time be totally fine. Only in like smaller establishments would you have to like really rely on Google Translate and Google Lens and stuff like that. So I would have liked more prep, but for the prep I got, I was fine.
So you're doing your prep,
Hmm.
and how did you decide like which places to kind of map around? Like give us an overview of where you went and
Yeah,
like why you did the order.
that's a good question. Like it was so it did two things. I asked a bunch of friends and people that I knew who had contacts that had been to Tokyo, and I've been fortunate enough to have like a plethora of information. Like it was almost a problem because it was so much information. And then in addition to that, so like I had all that saved, I had all of that compiled, and I was like, okay, I can take this, this, and this. And so sometimes it could be almost like too much information can be a bad thing as well. So I was like, you know what? Chat GPT is around. Let me give that a shot. And so I was like, let's go for it. And so what I did is I typed in what I wanted to do, how much time I wanted to spend, and everything like that. And it was like, okay, cool. So then I wanted to hit up all of, like the anime and video game stuff. I wanted to go to the onsens. I wanted to go see some historical stuff. I wanted to go, and that was pretty much it. And so based on that, ChatGPT gave me like 80% of my itinerary. And what I did to make sure, because it's still not perfect. And even if it was with the biggest air quotes, perfect AI, it's still not relevant to human experience. So what I did
Mm,
was I actually compared it with Charles and other people that I'd met. Be like, yo, this is what it's saying. What do you think? And for about 80% of the time, it was actually surprisingly accurate.
wow.
So yeah, so because of that, I was able to work out an itinerary going from so I flying in to Haneda in Tokyo, then going to uh then going to shoot, why am I blanking on this? Going to Hakone, going to Kyoto, going to Hiroshima, and then back to Tokyo so that way I could fly out easier when I was doing that. And I spent, like total of 18 days. Tokyo on both sides was like 4. Hakone was 3. Kyoto was 4 or 5. Hiroshima was 2. And then back to Tokyo. So there's some math in there and it equaled up to 18 days. So yeah,
Nice.
that's how that happened logistically.
Maybe the first person I've heard of who AI'd their vacation.
It says same. I asked around, and people were like, "Yeah, there's stuff on there that most people would not talk about because Very few people would have ever, like, I was talking to Charles and he's like, oh, it's interesting that they mentioned Halcone because most people don't go there.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, I was surprised about that too. So it's like, it's where like the onsens are located. I mean, the onsens are located in a round of a lot of parts of Japan, but Hakone is not typically the one place that people hear about. So, which is funny because if you're an Evangelion fan, apparently that's the city they based Eva in. So,
Ah,
if yeah, go there if you want to see it. The moment I found that out like a couple days after I got back, and I was like, "What?"
I
and
can like hear the robust cicada noise in my head as
and
you
you
describe it.
just you hear someone go like, "Get in the robot, Shinji," and for me it was like get in the onsen canal, and I was like, "Okay, I'll do that. That's no
Nice.
problem. Thank you, fucking Gendo."
Father of the
Uh,
year? No, no, never.
Father who needs to get arrested. Like that's what
Yeah.
he needs. That's what he needs. Honestly, CPS needs to be called on that motherfucker. Uh, so yeah, that's how the itinerary got done, and leading up to it was a bit of a whirlwind because I get ready. It's like the day before, a couple days before I get sick, and I was like, I got a sinus infection like after
Ugh.
a year, and like because the allergy shots were helping, and I was staving off a lot of like reactions to allergens and whatnot, and so I thought I was getting COVID. I was like, nah, it's an sinus infection. I test just to be sure. By the way, my doctor, the nurse that takes care of my shots came in clutch and gave me meds and stuff, so I was well enough to travel.
Nice.
And
Support our
then,
nurses. Underappreciated job.
oh my god, and underpaid, honestly,
Underpaid. Yeah.
for all the shit they do. Seriously. And Barb was great. Barb's still amazing. And so I get that, and then I was like, let me test just to be sure. Test came out negative. My dad was feeling weird, so he tested. So I gave him a test too. He's like, I'm fine. Don't worry about it. He tested. He's totally positive, and so
Oh.
immediately, I get the fuck out of like away from them, just out of respect. Like I was like, I love you guys, but I gotta go. And it was hard because I couldn't really hug him goodbye before I left.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was rough. Like and I was like, my parents had done a ton of international travel, so I was like hoping my mom could come over and just, look at what I needed and just kind of be in the fresh set of eyes for what I needed to pack. But we ended up video chatting. This is gonna get really, really personal, but I ended up just crying. We both end up just crying because, a lot is happening. It's a whirlwind, and then like going on my own international, and we were both just crying. And then we both felt better afterwards. Like it was a nice process that way.
Hmm.
I'll figure out if I want to keep that in or take that out later. But anyhow,
We support
the,
a good processing session. You did
thank
family
you.
therapy.
Apparently I did in that session right there. And my brother called me earlier that day. He's like, "Yeah, no problem. I'll drop you off tomorrow," because my dad was initially going to do it. And then the morning of, my brother accidentally he made an honest mistake. I don't. It's all good. These things happen. He put his alarm for the next day, and he called me right as I was expecting him to pick me up. He's like, "Hey, I'm really sorry. I set it for the wrong day." And I was like, "It's cool. I'll just get an Uber." And then the Uber took like 15 minutes longer than I expected. I get in the Uber finally. The guy is super cool. And then I get in there and my dad's texting me. He's like, "Did you tell him the right terminal?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's this one, right?" He's like, "That's the wrong terminal." I was like,
Oh, no.
"Damn it." And luckily the guy was like, "Oh, yeah, it's no problem. I'll get you there." And I was like, "Okay, cool. Thank you." And, and I get there and like I get to Lambert Airport, and the kiosk is not working. And and then I was like, okay, okay. So I go up to the guy and I was like, "Hey, it's not working." He's like, "Oh yeah, no problem." It's like 6. My flight's at 7:15. So I'm like international flight, so I'm a little worried. And
Oh,
his thing's not working, takes like 10 minutes to 15 minutes. I'm like exhausted because I had gotten up maybe at 4 o'clock and I'm like, just want this all to be done.
dude, yeah.
And yeah, and I tell he finally like resets his computer. He's like, "Oh, he's just acting weird. Sorry, man." I was like, "That's okay.
Yeah.
I'm fine." And so he gets it, he puts my bags on, and I was like, "Okay, cool." Then I just like lightly jog to security, and I go there and I get in line and I show him what I need to. And the guy just looks at me and said, "Go." And I was like, "What?" "Go." I was like, "Okay." So I just I just go to my gate and I wait in there and I get on the plane eventually and I fall the fuck asleep on the plane. I wake up in the air. I was like, okay, cool. And I fall back asleep and I wake up
Mm.
at the in Chicago O'Hare. And then I get out and I'm like, I call my dad. I was like, hey, I'm good. He's like, nice. Enjoy the 3 hours. Get something to eat. And I did. And I was like, I'm getting some McDonald's because that was a lot of stress.
The first meal of the journey.
Oh my gosh, McDonald's. So I get there, and then from there, it was the direct flight from there to Japan. So Japan Airlines is a fucking dream. They take care of you out there. And there's something about watching The Godfather in Japanese titles that's just really cool. I can't explain it. So,
Oh,
like, yeah, it's just really weird. Like, I don't know what the subtitles are saying, but it just adds a layer of coolness to it. I don't know why, but
it is an aesthetic for sure, for
it,
sure.
it is. Yeah, you know,
I
I
don't I don't know what the title would translate into. Like, would they change it to
mhm.
something Yakuza relevant, or do they have like a term for the Italian mafia in Japan?
I don't know, and I never really looked up in that, and that's actually a good question because if you go around the world, like they change the titles for marketability, and that happens all the
Mm-hmm.
time. Like one of Michael J. Fox's old movies, Teen Wolf, was called like I'm forgetting it, but it was something like Hairy Teenager Changes Sexy. I don't know, something crazy like it was something weird like that. But yeah, anyhow, so that was the whirlwind to get there. I get there eventually. Everything is like canal size because I was like tall or average height there, which is like 5'7" is the way to go, baby. If you want to go
You
to
made
Japan,
it.
be 5'7". And
It's your
and
moment, finally.
finally it took 32 years, but it finally happened. And yeah, it was great. The moment I get in there, they're playing like soft jazz on the in the hotel. I meet Charles. Charles gives me the it was like a straight up video game, dog. And I'm going a
Whoa.
mile a minute, so feel free to stop me at any time. But it was like I go meet him, we have dinner, and then like I'm talking to him and I'm like starting to fade fast. And initially we were supposed to go out drinking, and I'm like, dude, I don't have it in me. I need to go home and sleep. He's like, I think that's a good idea. But it was cool. It was like being in a tutorial of a video game, which is hilarious because he gave me like the first item that I ever used proper in Japan, which was the Rail Pass card, which is a Suica card that has the adorable penguin on it.
Yeah, that truly is like key item number one.
100%. Like, and he showed me the whole tutorial of how to like reload money on it and how to like. I know I straight up, which is hilarious because Charles himself said it's gonna be like a like it's gonna move so fast, man. It's gonna be like an awesome trip. I was like, yeah, it's like a video game, and like most video games that I love to talk about, which is the last two episodes of this podcast. I swear to you, it was like being in the Yakuza games. I was recognizing stuff that I'm like, I only like am familiar with this because I played the games. Like
Yeah,
I even just played one of the newer games, and when they go to the railway station, I'm like, that's exactly how it looks in Japan. It's a,
nice.
remarkably that. But I rambled for about 10 minutes there. What's some other questions you have for me? So I told you how I got there. We started
Yeah.
there.
So
So
I
I
mean,
land. I'm in Tokyo in this part.
I don't. Maybe it's just best to get this highly important part out of the way. You gotta
Please.
tell me about the food. You gotta tell me about what you ate.
Oh my God. So the reason I just did a sigh right there is because I miss it so much.
You're
Like
longing.
you have no idea, man. Like the quality of food out there. Like there's I remember learning as a child like the difference between quality and quantity. In the United States, we have quantity of
Mm,
like abundance of everything. But the quality out in Japan just makes you feel like we're doing it wrong. Yeah, seriously, like it's some of the best rice. I mean, it sounds really stereotypical, but some of the best rice I have ever had. Like,
okay. This
yeah,
is where you're really gonna need me to give a, or I'm going to need you to give me a flavor profile here. Like I want you to go
sure.
wine level tasting. Like how does
Okay.
it compare to like the white rice we have in this country.
Well, you see, if you take this rice, which is in Japan, like it's clearly high quality one because they're always like their high distilling is, distilling and making sure that water is high quality, which
Uh
when
huh.
you use water high quality to wash the rice and take care of the rice
Wash the rice, yes, of course.
at least 3 times and and you can it's like every grain has had a proper shower when you have it. And when they cook the grains and everything, you can taste every little grain. And it just makes me think like I'm glad I got a distiller machine for like my sinus rinses. I might even start using that for my rice. Like that's how
Just
I know,
make sure you
right?
clean it, right? I don't
I
know if
just
you have to clean that thing.
oh you do. You do. Like I would just be pouring the water into the for when I boil it and everything. So
Okay,
that's what
got
I'm
it.
that's what I'm talking about. Like the way that they distill and also they're fortunate in the way that they have a lot of, natural mountains. So like mountain water was really good. Like when I was in
Oh my god.
Hakone, I know when I was in Hakone, it's easier to get it because of mountain water. It's like a natural distilling process that way. You'd rather talk to an
Yeah.
environmentalist than that. But from what I've heard, that's what happens. So like just the level of distillation and the level of care that goes into the food is pretty remarkable. Even like the presentation. Normally, when you hear like presentation, people think of like the later season. I haven't watched it, but I've seen clips of like The Bear or any culinary shows. Like they give you a giant plate and like a little bit of food and like really cool design. Where like I went to Japan and like you go to like a normal place for ramen, which I miss so much
Oh no.
because I know because every time I have it here, I'm like, that was okay. Like I
Oh
knew
man.
I knew it was gonna happen, but I was like, maybe I'll be wrong. And but the presentation, like there's one time I was in Kyoto and the presentation for it was like they had taken either beef or I think it was beef and they spread it out like a fan on the top. And so it
Ooh.
was I know, right? And I have a picture of it and it was just beautiful because I fed my phone for every meal in Japan because I had to. Also, my
Of
sister-in-law
course.
requested it, so I had to do it as well. And I think you requested
Familial
it as
requirement.
yeah,
Oh
I think
yeah.
you did it as well, if I remember correctly.
And every time you
Um,
did, I told you that I hated you.
that's totally fair. And I don't blame you at all. What's important is that our friendship endured, so that's the important part.
Oh yeah, couples fight.
Nux. You can't see us, but we just air bumped or fist bumped across video chatting, which is
It's a
totally normal to
tradition.
do. It's what we've been doing since day one, which is
Yeah.
pretty amazing. I love it. 4 years and it's continued, which is amazing. Anyhow, so yeah, the presentation was beautiful, but they didn't skimp you on stuff too, which was really nice. And I mean, man, like the just like the care that went into the broth, the care that went into how they served me. It was how they served me. What kind of tea was it? I think it was green tea. Yeah, I think they served me
Ah.
green tea in like a whiskey glass, like and then green tea in like a beer glass, and that's just I don't know. It changes the whole thing for you. The fact that you could get green tea, like tea, high quality coffee. Every time I had coffee out there, it tasted so clear. Yeah, every
Yeah.
time I had matcha out there, one, they know how to do it. They know how to
Mm-hmm.
blend it properly and everything. And since I'm here, I might as well tell this fun story. So, with all the Duolingo I prepared, with all like the stuff that I talked about, getting ready for, not talked about, but all the stuff that I had done, efforts I'd made to make sure that I wasn't an asshole when I come into the country.
Priority.
I thank you. It was like, okay, konnichiwa or konbawa, depending on what time I got there. And then I was like, sometimes I just wanted to go to Starbucks because I know Starbucks. And also going to chain restaurants across the world is underratedly fun because they put their little spin on it. Like I went to the McDonald's in India and I can't tell you how flavorful everything was there. There was no beef, but all the chicken was like highly seasoned in a way that was just wonderful. And
Oh,
also the dollar goes far in Japan. It's like at the time I went, it was 160 yen to $1. So I was
wow.
doing so I was doing fine. The most expensive parts of the trip was just the flight and hotels. Otherwise, like everything else, a lot easier to do. And so I go into Starbucks and I'm like, "Konnichiwa," and they're like, and they respond back, "Konnichiwa," and I would type out my order in Google Translate, and they would look at it, read it, and then look back at me and go, "Do you want that hot or iced?" And immediately, I know, and immediately I was like, "I'll take it iced."
And the way I just want to comment, the way you like slowly approach the mic when you said that peak delivery, I could really feel the like disgruntled barista in front of me right now.
Thank you. But it was more like me like, oh shit, I could have just said this in English and then now I look like an asshole. And but I've told that to people and they're like, the fact that you took the time and didn't like bark at them in English, I think meant something to them.
True.
And but like it was just a part of me that's like, I was so stressed out walking into this place. And then all I'm like, damn it, you all speak English. Fuck. I mean, that didn't happen everywhere I went, but like some places I went, it was definitely like something that happened quite a bit. And where I was getting off the Shinkansen, which is the bullet train in Japan, and I go in there and same experience, and the cashier spoke English, and she's like, "Yo, Nihonjen is very good." I was like, "Oh, thank you. I'm trying really hard." And I only knew a couple phrases. She's like, "Are you a student?" I was like, "No, I'm just here for vacation." He's like, "Oh, where did you learn Japanese?" And I was like, "Oh, I watched a lot of anime."
Ah, boy.
I
Ah,
should have said
boy.
I should have said Duolingo, but she was nice enough to be like, "Oh, cool." Like she's like, "Enjoy your time in Japan." And I was like, "Thank you very much."
That's sweet.
It's pretty adorable. Yeah, it's just a lot of good interactions in Japan, for sure. Yeah, I'm a little hopped up on coffee, so I'm excited. Also, I love talking about this trip. I will say, within the month that I've been back, because I got back in the 21st, today's the 23rd when we're recording this. It's been nothing but fun talking about this trip, honestly. So,
Yeah. It's
yeah.
like honestly great, kind of absorbing the energy. I can tell like you had a great time and I can just feel it off you.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
So you
Uh,
said you can never have ramen in this country again.
well, never is a strong word. I'm going to have to because I love ramen. I will definitely become a snob for it. Like I kind of get why people when they travel, they sit and like someone tries to recreate the dish that they ate abroad, they're just never satisfied, and I get it completely now. But I also feel like I haven't found it's like people when they say, "Oh yeah, I've had Indian food and they've gone to this one place." I don't want to you know, damage their credibility, but like, yeah, I've been to this one place for years and the food's amazing. And I go like, yeah, my mom cooks better stuff. And not because she's my mom, but because I've had that restaurant for years and I'm like, okay, they're like passable, like fine.
Nice.
So you definitely. I'm sure if I found the equivalent for Japanese food, like someone who knows a good place to go, I'm sure I could have the similar kind of experience. It's really just about finding the right place when it comes down to it. Yeah. So I will definitely say the food quality is dramatically better. I think it also comes from having a smaller population. They don't
Mhm.
have to worry about however many million people are in America. Yeah, they can. So I will come halfway and say it's easier in Japan to do that.
Yeah,
Um,
that
yeah,
makes sense. So, off the cuff question,
go
vending
for it.
machines. What was the
Ooh,
weirdest thing that you were able to purchase from a vending machine?
good question. Weirdest thing that I was able to purchase from a vending machine. Oh, well, I don't know about weirdest, but definitely one that struck me. Yeah, that counts as weird because I didn't expect it to come out the way it did. I was in Nara Park, which is where the bowing deer are, which is
Ah,
like
yes.
so they will like they have warning signs on there to be like they can bite you, they can buck you, and they could also like impale you, so please do not anger them, which in America would never fly. But it was just funny that they're like, "Yeah, all right, all you kids, do what you want. Just don't be an asshole." And no one was.
Mhm.
It's where like you give them the senbei, which is like the cookies that are built like made for the deer and stuff.
The
So
deer
anyhow,
crackers.
the deer crackers, and I after I spent the day there, I was walking back to the train station to get home. It was a bit of a long walk. I walked so much on this trip. It was like I left 142 and I came somehow back 142 just from the sheer amount of walking I did there. Like I thought I gained weight because I was feeling all jiggly, but that's really just because from a lack of working out. Uh, but like my legs were just toast every day in a great way.
Hmm.
So that being aside, your question is the vending machine. And I went to this one part because I hadn't had really a substantial lunch, and dinner time was I was like past my dinner time. So I went and found this one vending machine, and it had I just was like I need straight calories. I don't care what it is. And I saw this ice cream sandwich that was like had soft wafers on the outside, hard chocolate in the middle, and then vanilla ice cream surrounding it.
Oh my god.
And it was amazing. It blew my mind. I thought it was gonna, because like when it came down, I heard a thud, and I was like, "Oh, that's totally cracked." No, it was fine. It was fine. It was absolutely wonderful. And then as I was walking, I was remembering in one of like the Facebook groups I am in for Japan that they had talked about, or I think one of the friends that I met that had been to Japan took a picture of this same like ice cream, and that it was just like really really fucking good. And it was amazing. It carried me all the way to when I had to walk down to the bus stop to get to the train station. So that was probably the wackiest thing that I saw. If I can extend the answer into the konbinis, if you don't mind.
Hmm. Oh,
Yeah.
please. Let us get
Okay.
into convenies. Please.
Sure. Sure. So, for those who are not uninitiated, as I push up my nerdy glasses of what, well, actually, Japan is like glasses of that, is the konbinis are the Japanese word for like convenience stores. It's what they refer to for that. And I I absolutely like fell in love with these places. We do not do them right out here. There's like four main ones that I saw: Lawson, Yamazaki, Family Mart, and then the probably the globally popular one, 7-Eleven. And they all have little different things here and there, but I'm not even kidding you. You can pay your bills, you can photocopy, you can use the ATM there, you can use the bathroom, you can do so many things at these. You can buy socks, you can probably buy underwear. I didn't check, but I think depending on some of them, you can buy underwear. Charging cables, protein from like char grilled chicken to
Oh
melon bread to containers that have matcha and milk already. Like you just have to shake it up and you can go. They'll microwave your food for you. They have
my
food that's
god.
already hot. They have food that's already cold. They have alcohol there. They have all these things. Like they even have like to go snacks of the onigiri, which is like this triangle shaped thing, seaweed wrap, uh, tuna, and mayo mixed into it. And it's just like if you're in a hurry, you need something to go that's not too high in carbohydrates, you can take this and it's a good snack for going. And it is astounding. The craziest thing I probably saw there was the fact that Japan really leans into the whole anime theme. So like there were vending machines that had Evangelion on them. There were pachinko parlors that had Fist of the North Stars on them. And then I got this one. I only got it because of the cover. What was inside was actually not that great comparatively, and it was a beautiful picture of a couple Gundams. And I was like, as the Gundam guy that I am, I was like I had to get it. It was just a little cracker inside, nothing too
Oh.
crazy, but still really good. And there's also a funny encounter where in one of them I was in a hurry and I was getting a water bottle, and the lady said something in Japanese, and I just reflexively said hi, which means like yes in Japanese. And she looked at me again. She goes, "Would you like a bag?" And I go, I know, and it kind of threw exactly. That was nearly my reaction as well, where I kind of just did like a double take, and I was like, yes, please, thank you." And I felt like such a jackass. I was like, oh, I thought she was asking me. I was like, I don't know what she's asking me. I'm hot, I'm sweaty because there was a heat wave in Japan when I went. They were expecting it to be like hoodie weather when I went
Hmm.
there. But yeah, um, wild, wild time.
Wild.
Yeah. Oh
I
man.
can I can only imagine, they see a foreigner, they imagine, English is one of the most widespread languages. They're going to default to English, and it might be easy to forget sometimes, like,
Yeah.
oh, this is how they're seeing me. So
It,
like
it
I gotta give you some
yeah.
credit here.
Thank you. I that you're definitely totally right. They could tell immediately the moment they saw this face. They were like, okay, we should probably switch to English, whatever English we know out
Talk
here.
to this handsome man in English.
Oh, well, thank you, sir. I'm sure they do. They say the same thing about you, and in fact, they will. Um,
Aw,
they will. They will.
boo. So let's
That's
continue to
rough.
climb
Sure.
this capitalist ladder here. You brought up Gundam models.
Yes,
And my big question for you is how did you not have a stroke in the land of gunplay?
because one, I was with a friend, so if I did have a stroke, I knew I was going to be fine. He could just catch me, and we could take me to the Japanese healthcare system after that. But I was in Tokyo Akihabara, if I or Ikeburo, I can't remember which because they're on the subway. They're not too far from each other, at least in terms of waiting. It's like maybe 10 minutes from each other, 5 to 10 minutes. And so I get there, and so since Japan is small in terms of landmass, they build up. So every like depending on what floor you are on, it could either the entire building could be one company, or it could be different companies, or it could be an apartment setup where it's like different floors, but also different rooms are different things, different companies altogether. So it depends. So I went to this one place, and it was a Gunpla store. It was on the seventh floor, if I remember correctly. And I get in there. Christ, I have never had more analysis paralysis in my life.
Oh
I
man.
They had every Gundam that I had heard of and more. So like yes, you could have probably bought the kits online and off Amazon and stuff like that. But I was like, nah, fuck that. I'm going to the actual Gundam store. Like
Hmm.
I want the brick and mortar place. And I'm glad I did because not only was I able to lug a Gundam home, which is the Freedom Gundam, I put it over there to get ready for this recording, but I also got a little cup that says Earth Federation Space Force on it, and it's like the perfect amount for espresso and shit.
Ah,
So, and it's like a metallic cup, so I don't have to worry about it, getting damaged and stuff. And it's just really cool to walk into a store. There's a picture of all of like the Principality of Xeon people on the side.
nice.
So, that's the thing with doing things in person instead of buying them online. You get the full experience that way. You get to
Yeah.
see, I got to see a lot of, it was actually really cute. I got to see a lot of father and sons trying to get Gunpla. And it was kind of what kept me from not having a stroke was like, just because Japan is smaller and I was carrying a backpack on, and, I had to, because I was coming out of the country and I had to have my stuff with me. So it was a little annoying to be like a ninja turtle because it felt like I had a little turtle shell on my back the whole time, and I had to make sure that I, got in, got out, and I wasn't being too much of a hindrance for people in the store and whatnot. And then the other levels of the store were like I think a restaurant, other anime stuff, and whatnot. But it was so much fun to just go there and just there was so much to buy. I must have picked up 5 different Gundams and then put 4 of them back because I was like, okay, we need to be reasonable. I'm going to a lot of cities. I'm gonna have to lug these all around. I'd rather take one back instead of 5. And I'm glad I did that. And yeah, I can't wait to build it. I actually just bought a shelf that I put all of them so I can put my other Gundams up so I can start enjoying them and stuff. So that was cool. That was
Yeah,
cool.
nice.
Yeah, man.
You know, when you're in your 30s, it's like Lowe's and things like that become like your toy store.
Oh my
I bet
God,
that was
yes.
like curative being like a kid in a toy store again.
Oh yeah, completely. And it felt awesome to just be like, I'm an adult and I have money, so I can like make my inner child. Not that my parents didn't make my inner child happy, but like that I could do it on my own terms, which is great because like it's my money and I'll spend it how I want to.
Yeah.
Um, and it's funny how you say Lowe's because I was thinking about going to Lowe's and Home Depot to get like a shelf for this, but I was like, you know what? People on Amazon probably have a bunch of people buy all this stuff on Amazon. Let me just go there. And it was a lot easier to get it there because I just had to hand screw it myself and I was done after a
Truth.
while. Yeah, next time you come over, I'll show it to you. It has like lights that pop up and stuff.
Oh,
So
dude. Yeah, I'd love to see
yeah,
it.
please, please.
Well, so I think next up, arcades. Like, so,
Dude,
ugh, enlighten me.
you're not even ready for this, man.
No, I'm unprepared.
You have no idea. I How do I even want to answer this? I might be overhyping it by how much I'm pausing, but I will say this, that it made me think about a lot of things. So like the arcade boom was really popular in the States in the 70s and 80s, kind of dies down near home console era during the late 80s, early 90s. But in Japan, they took it and ran.
Oh,
And I don't know what it was like in the 70s and 80s, but I can tell you what it is now. So it like just like I described in some of the buildings that like build up, they're known for like the claw machines, like those are really popular like that on one
yeah,
floor, and then the gachas, GACHAs, where you put in a bunch of it's a total money grab. They put in a bunch of
dude.
money and then you like turn it and you might get something you like. I got like the last Gundam that was in one of these, and immediately it said out of stock after I got mine, which is just chef's
Ah,
kiss right there.
yes.
And and so what happened is that when I walked in, the way I found it was actually like really beautiful because it was near like the last third of the trip. And I was in Hiroshima. I had seen the atomic bomb museum. I went to the atomic dome that it's a building they kept up. And yeah, it was a real somber moment. But then I was like, I need to get some dinner. And I was walking around and after I had dinner, I walked around and I found this arcade that I just happened upon. It didn't plan on it. I was looking for some matcha dessert, and I found it. And it was the Taito Arcade. It's a chain around Japan, and I go
Oh,
in. Yeah, so I go in there. Like I mentioned, they have the gachas and they have the crane machine that you can get, and you know like loud lights going, 7 different levels, and I'm just like losing my mind. I was like, holy shit, this is just like the Yakuza games. Fuck yeah. And so I go in there and I see like all these prizes that they have there. I'm not gonna waste my money on the crane ones because I was like, nah, I learned my lesson when I was a child. And so the reason why I say is that, it was really popular in the States for a while and then it stopped being popular after home consoles, is that Japan has really invested in, from what I'd seen, now this is in Hiroshima and then I also saw these in Tokyo, that they really like focus on like the experience and like other stuff you can do. So they'll take like games and put them over into an arcade, so that way you can kind of play with your friends.
ooh,
I played Dance Dance Revolution. I played a rhythm game that like plays anime songs. So like, it's a good way of still keeping that experience going. And since Japan is still very cash based, it's not uncommon for them to use like quarters or sorry, their coins or specific tokens that they have. So like I even was walking around one of these buildings and I saw JoJo's. It was the JoJo's game where you're like it's the multiverse one.
yeah.
They were playing that. You had a whole joystick. The first time I went to an arcade, like there was like Street Fighter, there was Virtua Fighter, and then there was Gundam, which I totally went to.
Oh,
And
yeah. Of course you did.
not, of course, and like I didn't know what the fuck was going on because I didn't have time to take out my phone to translate stuff. So I was just like free balling this shit. And as I'm going and playing, there's slots in some of the other games, like slots for like trading cards. So from what I understood, you could actually like take out trading cards and have it influence the game. So
Oh,
right,
sick.
which is super cool because like it gives you such an interactive experience. So in my opinion, we could totally bring this back and kind of do it like Japan does. That way, it would kind of get gamers to meet other gamers in IRL, which I think is something
Hmm.
that we definitely need in that community. Because, and I'm sure we have it in some pockets, like in professional gaming and whatnot. But I'm like, we need it more for the casual gamer. I feel at this
Hmm.
part, and it was just really cool to see that being such a fun, and it was, yeah, definitely, it was packed because it's Japan. It's good. They don't have a whole lot of space, but like there it was really really cool to see how the arcades were held up out there because it was so much fun to just walk around and see so many different systems, so many different things you can interact with, and I think I even only scratched the surface of it, honestly. So that was dope.
I can only imagine. So I
Yeah.
feel like we are stepping up a ladder here, getting from like very basic things that, you and I nerd out about
Oh
and
yeah.
advancing to things that, somebody who isn't a fucking weeb would find more interesting. Let me ask you about this. So,
Sure.
karaoke. What?
Oh,
Tell me about your karaoke experience.
so it was my jelly, it was my jam, it was my juice. It was awesome. So as I've mentioned a plethora of times on this episode and previously, I love the Yakuza games. I love even outside of that, even before that, I love doing karaoke. I go there and I do Disney songs and rap songs all the time.
Nice.
And my buddy Charles and we went up and hit up the karaoke bar, and it's like you go in there and like everyone's wearing, like, the people who are working behind the desk are like wearing bow ties and uh dress jackets and stuff, like dress vests and stuff like that, and it's like a really like pristine posh kind of thing. And then you go upstairs and it's just like a bunch of small doors that go into your own room, and we did literally every Japanese anime intro that we could find out there. I'm talking Fist of the North Star. I'm talking Card Captors. I'm talking Johto, post Johto League Pokemon. And then,
Whoa, deep
yeah,
cuts.
I seriously, right? And then there was like, so it was kind of funny because like some of them we really knew and some of them were like, we've never heard this version at all. And then they had it, and I was so glad he recorded me. I hope I sound good on it. But we did the classic meme song that people know as Dame Dame, but it's the Yakuza song Bakumitai.
Yep.
And I knew it word for word. I knew exactly what was going on in terms of how to sing it. And it was baller. We totally snuck in, like, you could order drinks there, but we totally snuck in like our own alcohol
Yeah,
in
of
there
course.
to enjoy. And it was not terribly expensive. It was like, I don't remember how much it was, but it wasn't exorbitant. And we extended our time twice, and it was a great time. This was out in Shibuya, and which is like a very, very like happening
Hmm.
city party life area. Yeah. Yeah, it was such a great experience. I'm trying to think. I think there was one time I was using the bathroom and I had to go up a floor, and as I was coming back to our floor, I think I heard some group was singing like In Sync or something, which was just kind of nice to walk past and then get back into my room for. So yeah, it was so much fun. There's a bunch of different. I think there's one particular chain that I don't remember the name for, but like when you walk in, it's like you're walking into a like a it looks like a really high end place, and like it's like spick and span, and then you go upstairs and you're like, oh wow, this is like your little room that you can just hang out with your friends, like maybe 4 or 5 people, and it's a very fun experience. I love it.
Nice. That's
Yeah.
kind of what you want for a karaoke experience. I feel like I
Yeah.
love a bar karaoke night, but like they used to have karaoke on like the Xbox back in the day, and you get with your high school buddies and you're singing
Yeah.
like Blink 182.
Oh,
Like I feel
yeah.
that's the closest that we come to
To
the
that.
original authentic experience you're describing.
I agree. And I mean, I was just thinking about Rock Band when you said that too. Like, you could turn it on, like, I think it was a certain mode, and so you didn't have to worry about being good or bad. You could just sing, and that was just a lot of fun. And it's something that I feel that they. This is getting pretty deep. It's something I feel that they don't do for anyone past being the like drinking age as an adult.
Hmm.
Like they only care about you up till that point, and then you can only go to bars
Yeah.
and stuff. Like now it's starting to change a little bit with like barcades and certain situations of like Top Golf and stuff like that. But I think because our age dynamic is our dynamic of generation is just getting older, and people kind of miss the games. So that's slowly
Hmm.
happening. But there's such a like a dearth of like, oh yeah, there's other stuff you can do besides just getting fucking wasted.
Yeah.
Uh, and I'm glad that that is still at least like something you can do without people kind of laughing at you out in Japan, because yeah, either people are too nervous or too scared. Because like I do love like the whole like in a bar and singing karaoke, but sometimes I just want to goof off with my friends and do that,
Yeah.
and that's just more fun. I feel like those kind of encounters are what I like to call couch co-op couch co-op experiences, where it's not necessarily playing video games with someone right next to you, but like doing an activity right next to you. We've gotten so insular,
Yeah.
especially after the pandemic. It's
The
been some
modern the modern game parlor.
seriously, man. Seriously, it needs to change, and yeah, it needs to change. Yeah,
So let me see here.
yeah, take your time.
You, before we plan this episode,
Yeah,
you told me that you had a friend who did a Yakuza encounter, and we both agreed that you were not going to tell me this until we were recording, so you could get a
sure.
live reaction from me.
Yeah,
Is now the time? Should we?
yeah, we can because it's the same friend. It's Charles. He didn't mind telling this, but like it was the first day that I met him, and I was talking to him. I was like, oh yeah, I played the Yakuza games, and I, I'm like, I was like freaking out as we were walking to the restaurant, and I was like, I've seen something like this, or I've seen something like that, and I think he was quietly, he wasn't quietly, he was like, like happily smiling to himself that like someone was enjoying Japan like that. And he's like, "Oh yeah, it kind of reminds me of my Yakuza experience." And I just like laughed. And I was like, haha, nice. And he's like, "Oh, I'm not joking." I was like, "What?" And so it's not. I will be honest and say it's not like. I hope I didn't overhype it, but it was a story that definitely caught me off guard.
Yeah.
And that I think that he didn't expect either. So he's like, so after like, so to give you my kind of take on it, is like after 2017, there's been a lot of anti Yakuza laws,
Hmm.
and they've kind of been cut into a third of what they used to be. So they, for the most part, just lay low. They don't fuck around. They don't really get involved with the populace because it's not the 90s anymore. And it's definitely
Hmm.
been 7 years of whatever it's been for them. And so the way I heard the story is that this one guy, they were all at either an izakaya or at a bar, and he was with a lot of his girlfriend, a couple of female friends, and some of the other like expatriates from around the world, including America, that are living in Japan now. And so one of them was messing with one of their female friends, and he was like, "Hey, like she's not interested, like just back off." And this guy got really uptight and really like angry, and then actually like almost choked out my friend.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it got intense. And luckily, one of his friends knew the bouncer. So the bouncer came over and like pulled him off and, saved my friend from getting knocked out and shit. And
Yeah.
eventually, like I think they'd ended on good terms, oddly enough, because I think he even said I don't know if he apologized, but like, something that like quelled the tension and, fear that was going on. Cause like, he eventually just like got him to go away and stuff like
Hmm.
that. So he's like, "Yeah, man, I survived a Yakuza encounter." I was like, "That is not something I expected to hear come out of your mouth. That is ridiculous." So Charles is one of the few people I know in my real life that it's actually encountered the Yakuza. Apparently, he said he was. I don't. It's been a while since I've heard this story, so I'm a little rusty. But he did say that Noah came after him. He kind of just went on the other side of the bar and like drifted off. And I think he was either that or he was kicked out at a certain point, but it was because of his friend knowing the bouncer that he didn't get in trouble in the first place. So it
Okay.
was
All
it
right.
was it was wild. It was wild. Which is weird because you wouldn't think that they would try to draw attention after being have to be underground this whole time. So
Sure.
that was wild hearing that story. And I actually met the guy later after we were karaokeing. Not the Yakuza head, but the guy that luckily knew the bouncer that got him to not get choked out that night. So
Yeah.
that was intense. That was hearing that while I was walking and just I was like, there's a part of me that was kind of jealous because I was like, fuck, I can't say I survived a Yakuza attack. But then again, I don't know if I want to after hearing what happened. So yeah, he's fine. He's like, yeah, it happened. It's all good. I just kind of walked it off after that.
Yeah.
So I hope I didn't overhype that, but that was kind of the story that happened.
Ah, adequately hyped. If
Okay,
only he had played the Yakuza games like you, then he would have known exactly how to navigate the situation.
he would have known, which families were attacking which, and like, how to, yeah, exactly. But it can't all be perfect. That's the truth of the matter.
Hmm.
Big shout out again to Charles. You're cool as fuck. Um, so yeah, that was how that went down. And speaking of Yakuza, like I told him all about the games, and he's like, "Yeah, we gotta take you to a Kabukicho." And I was like, "That's where the sign is, right?" And that's the
The sign.
classic, the gate that they show in the Yakuza games, which is this red like kind of gate that shows where you get into Kamurocho, which is the fake city based on Kabukicho. And I got to take a picture next to it, and I was like just loving every moment of it. I was like, I can't believe I'm here. I was playing the game last night, and there's a part where you go there, and I was like, I miss Japan.
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah. Were
Oh
there
man.
any other cool sights that you got to see from the games?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. That's the only one that I remember. There were some other parts that I was walking around and I'm like, okay, they've taken inspiration from
Hmm.
there. And there were some parts where I think like there was one time I was watching like I've mentioned this before on the podcast. There was a part in Shinjuku where I had seen in a movie and I was like, that's straight out of the Yakuza games. I was like, it's like almost like part for part out from there. Even to the way like the now that you're saying this, it's kind of sparking some memories of like I'll be walking around somewhere and like down to the way like they have railings on certain parts of the parks or certain things around the street were identical to what I had played in the video games. So that was really cool to just see like more stuff in the background just be very, very well done in terms of what I was seeing. So if you play the games, you'll be very comfortable in Japan. I will definitely tell you that part. So that was really cool. And as for other sites in the game, not as black and white as like seeing the gate, but definitely like some elements that I've been actually, you know what? I was playing the game last night to prepare with the biggest air quotes for today. And there's a one part where you're walking past like a parking lot in particular. And it's exactly like walking into the district in Shibuya where it's all about the hostess clubs, both male and female. And
Hmm.
it's kind of crazy because you'll be walking along and people will be speaking English to you to like, "Hey, how are you? You want to come over here?" And we immediately just say no because it's you'll get suckered into like paying a bunch of money for something. So like
Mm.
in that way it's very similar, but like I did see signs in the game that were identical. And if you play the one in the 80s that the Yakuza plays, then the Yakuza game set in the 80s, you'll see that kind of feeling there when I was there at that time. So that kind of always trying to entice you to do stuff is definitely happening still out there.
Yeah.
So in those ways, it was very identical. Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the next things I wanted to ask you about, and feel free to keep your secrets here, Kanal,
Oh God.
but I understand that you are now a trained killer and you've studied several martial arts while you were in the land of the rising sun.
I like the Land of the Rising Sun line. That was cool. Killer is a strong word. More like weeb adjacent for martial arts. I mean,
Nice.
I I've retired a lot of the training just because it wasn't for me anymore, and I was getting injured too much. Luckily, I had nothing's permanent, but still, but I still have the interest for it. And so I had signed up for two different things. One was it was in Tokyo. It was the samurai exhibit, and basically I got to show up to an Aikido school, which is the art for drawing your sword, which doesn't seem like a lot of importance, but I mean it's like the like if we're relating it to an American audience, it's like the pull on a drug. It's like the pull on a gun. The moment you pull your gun first or pull your sword first, that could be the decisive moment in an encounter physically, a physical
Mm,
altercation. So
yeah.
that still exists today. The school is like a couple centuries year old, and it was like a small place out in Tokyo. I meet with a contact. I was so afraid of showing up at the wrong place, and the place is really cool. It was really like one, two, three, four senior level students, and then the main teacher who didn't speak a whole lot of English, who was just kind of chilling in the back. And so I was primarily talking initially to this guy named Giuliano, who I think was half Japanese. And he was, answering, like, he was just like kind of giving me the background of his school, giving the background on what they do, and, telling me why they have five pleats because five is an important number to the samurai and stuff like that.
Mm.
And then, like midway through explanation, there's this kid that walks in. He's like, "Hey, I'm ready for my lesson," and like everyone just like stares at him, And then they go like, you it's his lesson right now. And they're pointing to me and I'm just sitting there going like, well, this is weird. And so
Oh boy.
they, I know. So then they pull him in the back and there was apparently some confusion that happened. So then they at this point they've already like dressed me up in the samurai garb and give me a real katana, which was heavier than I expected.
Oh
So I've
yeah.
worked with yeah, I've worked with like wooden shinai and stuff like that, but I've held one katana years and years ago, which is a weird kind of my uncle was I don't think I told you this. My uncle was working in the family business for a minute and one guy couldn't pay his rent, but he's like, hang on to this sword, you can sell it for collateral. And it was a real katana. And yeah, and then he eventually did pay he was like, I'm good for it. I'm gonna get the money. If I can't get the money, sell the sword. All good. And so he told my mom told me, so we came and like, I got to play with the katana for a little bit. But then so
Nice.
back I know, back to Japan, I'm like trying to use it and the guy's like giving broken English lessons to me because his other uh, martial arts colleague had to step in and help. And so I was doing it, and they're like, okay, just swing it like this. And they knew I had some martial arts training, but when I cut it, they didn't expect me to do it so well on the first shot. So it went straight down on, it would be my right to I cut this piece of cardboard and I cut it so well, but I had trouble like taking it out. And so one of the students runs over and helps like push it out
Oh.
and and they were like, "Oh wow, we don't normally see that in the first shot." And then I was like, "Oh nice." And then of course I tensed up, and the second one I had like it was a little more choppy, but it was remarkably like I was like, "Oh, this is harder to swing around. Like it's lighter in how it cuts, but heavier in your hands.
Oh.
It's difficult to explain."
Yeah.
And eventually I got it. And in order to save some time, I don't know if this was planned or not, but in order to like buy some time for like talking to that kid that walked in, their teacher came in and I am not shitting you. And I actually know you've seen the videos. Like he came in and out of a fucking anime scene. I'm not even exaggerating. Came in and just cut these tatami mats that he had like rolled up and put all on there. And then also at one time took this milk carton and cut it. And at first I just saw it like go across the room, and in my mind I was like, oh, that didn't go as planned. But then he picks it up and they're in two pieces, and I was like, Jesus Christ, that's not easy to do. There's even this one part where I had to search for it if I recorded it, but he sat down and just immediately took off the scabbard, grabbed the handle, and then cut the tatami mats, which is like it was really hard to do that. It's sometimes it's hard to describe these things to people who have never done a whole lot of martial arts, but that's not easy to do. It takes an
We're
amazing amount of practice and precision
sure. We're
because
talking like really light objects that are just going to
yes,
naturally go flying. It needs to have the sharpness of the blade. I imagine the force and the angle.
you hit it right on the head. That's exactly how it is. And yeah, so we finished all of that. They were actually like really were very lighthearted. Giuliano came back. He's like, I wish I could have seen you cut it, but just from the evidence, it looks like you've done really well. And he's like, I recommend that you put this guy in your backpacks. That way he stares at everyone as you go by. And I was laughing. I was like, you know what? That's a great idea. If I turn him around, he'll probably even stare at more people. And they were a bunch of good people, like really lighthearted people, really fun to do. So this was in Tokyo. And then the second experience was in Kyoto.
Hmm.
By the way, Kyoto's trains make no fucking sense. I will
Oh no.
say that till I die. Yeah, I don't know what. Every time it crosses through Kyoto Station, I was lost, and other Americans and other people who were there were just as lost too. So the second experience was a ninjutsu school, and I was like, "Fuck yeah!" So I find the school with like 5 minutes to spare, and as I'm getting in, I was like, "Hey, how's it going?" It's like, "Oh, nice." They marked me down, and I look over, and immediately I see like five children
Oh
who
no.
can't be older than like 11, and internally I just like fuck my life.
This is like entering like an introductory karate class.
Oh, dude, you that's a perfect example because that's exactly how it felt. Luckily, they were with their parents, so it made it a little better, but like I go there and I'm like, damn it. Fuck me. I felt so lied to because in the photos on their like on their site, they had shown a bunch of people like around our age. So I was like, oh,
Hmm.
I'll be fine. It's not a big deal. And I couldn't really sign up for they kind of just lumped you in when they had a free spot. So I was like, okay, I'll take it. And so I go there and it was really cool. They show us like how to do how to use shurikens, how to use blow darts, and they
Ooh.
specifically warned us like do not inhale because it will go to the back of your throat. This is when you realize like okay, like America puts on a lot of safety kid gloves for you, and it's like all right, cool. Because like I'm sure you would hear something similar. I've heard something similar in India where it's like yeah, just don't do that, and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Whereas in America, there'd be so many lawsuits, they would slap you until you had grandchildren.
Yeah. You're signing
Uh,
free waivers for sure.
oh yeah, yeah, and at the least, and so it was really cool. They show us like they had it was a really cool setup. They had like winding doors for us to sneak through. They since the ninja were like disgruntled people who had they weren't necessarily samurai, but they were people that were had done some similar training as a samurai. And if you weren't samurai, you were no longer allowed to carry katanas. So people who so this made people a lot, quite disgruntled at a certain part in Japan's history. So they went underground, and so that's why they ninjas know how to use katanas and ninjatos, which are
Mm.
much smaller. And they showed us like they used to use the scabbard as a way to like breathe underwater. That you could take part of it and use it as like a little like jettison to climb short distance on walls. You could pull the scabbard a little bit in a certain way to like detect where people were,
Oh.
and yeah, and then like if you hit one of them, you could like pull the sword out of this like the rest of the scabbard and then attack them. Like there's some cool shit you could really do that was really awesome to hear. They showed Kobutans and other weapons that they had. And I got to draw one, I got to use one, and yeah, it was really cool. They actually showed us like different, like just straight out of Naruto, where like you had different hand signals. Like
Yeah.
there's a whole board of different stuff that you could meditate with or use, like the whole like using your hands like this, which is straight out of Naruto,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
actually a real thing, which is really cool. And yeah, then we got to pose with a bunch of the weapons at the end, and it was just a fun time. It was a fun time. Yeah.
A
Once I got
12-year
past
old could never appreciate it like you can, Kunal.
exactly because they didn't have my knowledge over
Huh.
here,
They didn't
but
study the blade.
they were only trying to swing it around. Like I did want to kick one of those kids in the face, but I was like, Kunal, he is. You did the same thing when you were his age. Be nice. I was like, be nice, be nice, be nice. One of them almost hit me in the face with a nunchuck, but
Oh
luckily,
no.
yeah, it was interesting that way. But we're all good. All walked away with all our digits, so that's
All of
fine.
our faces. That's cool.
Yeah, it was moneymaker's still intact, so we're good. Yeah, that was awesome. And there's apparently other levels that come into with that program, so that was worth it. Yeah, that was the two. Yeah, that was the only martial arts stuff that I did out there, and that was plenty. That's exactly what I wanted to do for this round, as such. So yeah,
Nice.
yeah,
Nice.
dog.
I mean, how many people can say they learned to draw a katana and also blow a blow dart? And I guess use nunchucks? You did that too?
No, no, I that was one of the kids almost hit me in the face with. So
Oh, geez. All right.
I
He
know, right?
needed to learn how to use nunchucks, clearly.
Yeah, yeah, they did. They did. And luckily, their parents apologized, so I was like, okay, whatever. Like
All right.
that's what I wanted at the end of the day, just like some cognizance of what was going on. So
Mm-hmm.
that's fine.
It's the ninjutsu code here. You get one. You get
You got
one.
everyone gets one. I almost got hit with like the waist with one of the shurikens. The kid was just luckily it was like plastic, but still he was just like waving around like a jackass.
Oh
So
my god.
yeah, I was
Children.
glad they didn't give them real shurikens. The adults they gave real shurikens, and I think the kids had something equivalent now that I think about it. But still, yeah, that's what happened.
Cool.
All right, guys. So that pretty much wraps up the first section of this. We're having a lot of fun, so we're going to do a part 2. Don't worry. I'll cut it, chop it up, get it ready.
Bye.
Hey, fan peeps. Thanks for listening, and I'd love any feedback you have for me. Please follow the Facebook page, They Need a Hobby, and follow us everywhere, social media-wise, under the handle @TNAHpod. That goes for Twitter and Instagram, and one of these days, I'll be super popular.